I want you to know I have the utmost respect for you veterans and for all of those who fought for the freedom of others. And I have utter contempt for weak-willed politicians who sell out our veterans or don't support them on the field of battle. You know what the difference between an American soldier and a politician is? American soldier says this: I will leave no one behind. You know what the politician says? Really? What does it matter? I have a quote to read. I'm a journalist by trade, and not a liberal one, as you can tell. And one of my heroes in the area of journalism is a great American by the name of Thomas Sowell, Dr. Thomas Sowell. I want to read a quote. In recent years, Vietnam's communist leaders themselves had admitted that they'd lost the war on the ground, but hung on because of the American anti-war movement gave them hope that they could win it politically. It was a well-founded hope that the American media helped make come true when we withdrew both our troops and our financial and political backing from the Vietnamese under attack, end of quote. You know my reaction to that is? How disgusting. How sickening. Communist Viet Cong military leaders openly admitted they lost the war on the ground, but our GIs were sold out back home. I want to tell you something, that's not the end of the story, because I believe in the God of the Bible, and I know that God does not leave good works unrewarded. He promises to reward them, and I think there's much good that's come out of even these no-win wars. We've had two of them, Vietnam and Korea. Are there any veterans from the forgotten war here? Raise your hand. First of all, thank you for your service. Second of all, how many of you people even know what the forgotten war is? The forgotten war is Korea. It's a 3-year engagement from 1950 to 1953. And military speaking, nothing was accomplished. Because after World War II, our politicians foolishly decided that they would work with the communists and give half of the Korean peninsula to the communists and half to the Allies. And the Allies were occupying the 38th parallel in the DMZ zone before the Korean conflict, and our politicians said, you know, we need to draw them down and save money. And the Koreans says, no, 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 if you do that, guess what's going to happen? North Korea will attack. Guess what? North Korea attacked. We were caught kind of with our pants down. And our skeleton soldiers, or crew, a group of soldiers there, and the South Koreans retreated against overwhelming odds and were almost driven into the sea before we got reinforcements back in and drove them back. And we not only drove them back to the 38th parallel, we just kept on driving with General MacArthur almost to the Chinese border. And I want to tell you something, the fighting was bloody and deadly as much as World War II, except it was way worse weather. And the Marines got trapped around Chosin Reservoir. And it got nicknamed by the Marines as the Frozen Chosin, because that's what it was. It was cold. More men died to hypothermia than in a field of battle. And they were pinned down, 20,000 of them. You know why they were losing? Because the Chinese snuck 100,000 troops across the border into North Korea to back them up. And the Marines that did survive and come out of there are affectionately called the chosen few. Now there was a hero, if you've been watching news lately, there's a Staff Sergeant Reckless that got honored because of that battle. Anybody know who Staff Sergeant Reckless is? There. Staff Sergeant Reckless. Unbelievable hero of that fight. It's a horse. So well trained by the Marines that the horse, they would load a wounded Marine on the horse, and the horse would trek out to a pickup point where they could drop that wounded soldier off. Then they would load ammunition on that horse, and that horse would go back alone to bring more ammunition to the Marines so they wouldn't get slaughtered by the Chinese. 51 trips in 5 days. Incredible. And you and our politicians said, let's go back to the DMZ and let's leave it right there. That's what happened. Militarily speaking, it was a joke. But I want to tell you something. If you're a Korean War vet, you need to be thanked for the cause of freedom unbelievably, and here's why. Let me ask you a question. Name the philosophy/religion that between 1900 and 2000 has slaughtered more than 100 million innocents. Can you name that philosophy religion? It's atheism. It's manifested itself in communism, in fascism, and in Nazism. And today, because of the fighting of the American GI, there were 1.5 million troops that went to Korea and fought in that conflict, saw action. 140,000 either killed and or wounded, and 8,000 of those are still MIAs. But from a perspective of freedom, we have so much to thank you Korean vets, because here's what happened. South Korea stayed free, North Korea stayed communist. Today, what is the most free country in the world? Can you name it? South Korea. And the reason South Korea is free is because it has a philosophy of Christianity. Christianity is the philosophical basis for freedom. If you don't have Christianity as your basis, you will not stay free. Now, name the most oppressed country in the world. Name it. North Korea. What's its philosophy? Atheism. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you, the Korean War vets have probably done more in this generation for the cause of freedom, because South Korea actively sends out missionaries across the world, including America, to try and get us to turn back to God. They are spreading the message of freedom. Because I want to tell you something, there's a constant conflict. I remember I talked about freedom struggle. There's a constant conflict. We either honor God and His principles and stay free, live right, or government will gladly step in and take away your rights and become God. It's as simple as that. And, you know, even with the Vietnam War, another Norwin war, have you ever thought about this, Vietnam vets? Do you know there has never been another armed conflict with communists since Vietnam? You ever wonder why? Now, I'm not going to stand in front of you and say I know all the answers, but I do think one thing. I think because we kicked their butts in Vietnam, they didn't want to try again. This is for you veterans of the forgotten war and the Vietnam conflict. Flying soldiers from the sky, fearless men who jump and die, men who mean just what they say, the brave men of the Green Beret. Silver wings upon their chest, these are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 with the Green Beret. Trained to live off nature's land, trained in combat hand to hand, men who fight by night and day. Courage speaks from the Green Beret. their chest. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 with a green beret. A young wife waits. Her green beret has met his fate. He has died for those oppressed, leaving her his last request. You know what it is? Put silver wings on my son's chest. Make him one of America's best. He'll be a man they'll test one day. Have him win a green beret. Silver wings upon their chest. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 with a green beret. Silver wings upon their chests. These are men, America's best. 100 men will test today, but only 3 with a green beret. Thank you, men, for your service, in spite of what our politicians did at home.